So good evening, everyone. So today we'll talk about signal and image processing. As we discussed, that mostly basic signal and image processing operations, and we'll talk about the time and frequency domain representations and theories of filter design and convolution operations, and so on. So first, let us look at what is signal processing. So of course, humans are the most advanced signal processor, and in our day-to-day life, we do a lot of pattern recognition and signal processing for our everyday communication. And we encounter many types of signals like electrical, mechanical, acoustic, others. And maybe in a later lecture, we will talk about more human aspect of signal processing when we talk about eye gaze tracking or haptic interfaces. But today we will talk about machine representations of signal and images. For example, audio processing in FM radios or video processing in traditional TV sets. So these are analog signal processing, and we will also talk about the analog to digital converter and digital signal processing. So what we need in research. So as we are discussing before the lecture, that we represent signal as a function of time, and when we are talking about image or video, we represent the signal as a function of x and y, which is and the value of x and y is the pixel value, which is indicated by the resolution of an image. And for video, we also access the time, and we can describe the video frame for each pixel value at a particular time instant. And some of the basic signal processing that we talk about is correlation, outlier detection, sudden change in signal, which we briefly come across in some previous demonstration when we talk about cognitive load estimation from ocular parameters that certain, and also later on we may discuss about EEG signal processing, where we look at, or brain computer interface, where we look at certain change in signal after a particular stimulus. And of course we should look for repeating pattern, which not only repeating pattern but specific type of pattern. Sometimes it's called template matching, which are commonly used for speech processing, sketch recognition, gesture recognition, and so on. So today we'll talk about analog and digital signal, very basic signal operations like addition, subtraction, differentiation, integration, etc. Then we will move to digital signal processing, because now most of the computer interface are digital circuits. The use of analog circuits are really less compared to digital circuits. We talk about different time and frequency domain representations. As we discussed, that we will look at the mathematical equations, but as it is not a course on signal processing, so we'll not go into very much details of the mathematical equations, but I will put you links from which you can go for further solving of uh, time and frequency transformations. We'll talk about filter techniques, and we'll talk about a very important signal processing operations called convolution, which will be subject to the next week's lecture on convolutional neural network, a very common technique used for now pattern recognition or object detection and classification. And we'll talk about masking using low pass filtering. So start with basic signal operations like um, arithmetic operation, differentiation, integration, and time shifting or scaling operation, where we move a signal. So in this context, perhaps it will be interesting to uh, note that how we describe a signal. So generally, there are three properties by which we can describe a signal. One is the amplitude, that is the value we plot on the y-axis. Next is the frequency. That means if it is a the signal has a repeating sequence, say for example a sinusoid, that how uh, frequently it's repeating its pattern, or how many ebbs and flows it has on a particular time, and that we measure by hertz. And the third one is the phase of the signal. That means from a given time instance, that uh, when what is the time lag between a given time instance and maybe the start or a particular pattern of a signal. So we describe a signal by these three properties: the amplitude, the frequency, and the phase. So before going into the digital signal processing, we'll look at some of the basic limitations of analog signal processing. One is accuracy limitations due to component tolerances, undeserved nonlinearities, and then mostly the instruments that we use for recording analog signal, they are not as accurate as the digital signals, and they are also sensitive to noise, and it's difficult to implement certain operations like nonlinear operations, time varying operations. And you can remember the earlier these bulky computers and using the valve, and how we now implement a lot of operation using transistors or integrated circuits, which is one of the reasons of this tremendous progress in electronic technology. So this is the basic way of converting an analog signal to a digital signal. That means we sample or measure the value of the, so sampling means that measuring the value of at a particular time instance. So we measure the value of or amplitude, frequency, amplitude of the signal at a certain frequency. We look at the certain frequency in the next slide. And instead of a continuous signal, we get something like a piecewise signal. And a lot of signal operation which we can do on this step or piecewise signal becomes equivalent to doing it on the original analog signal, with of course with some degree of noise. So digital signal processing means that the analog waveform is sliced into equal segments, and the waveform amplitude is measured in the middle of each segment, and the collection of these measurements make up the digital representation of the waveform. So in this process, we of course insert some noise at the benefit of easing out certain signal processing operation. So when we are talking about that, we are inserting noise and we are losing some signal information. So it is very important to understand that when or how frequently I should measure the signal, analog signal samples or sampling, or how quickly I should sample the signal. So there is a very well-known law or rule called the Nyquist rate and the Nyquist frequency, which says that if a function xt contains no frequencies higher than b hertz, here b hertz means that at 1 second the signal is repeating itself b number of times. So that is what we represent by b hertz. So for example, a 60 hertz signal, like most of our computer monitors, they have 60 hertz frequency. That means they are changing or they are repeating 60 times each second, or I can measure it 60 times each second. So a function which contains no frequencies higher than b hertz, it is completely determined by giving its ordinate at a series of points spaced at 1 by 2b seconds apart, or more easily what we can tell that if I know that the signal frequency, which is b hertz, so I have to sample it at twice of this frequency. So a sufficient sample list is therefore 2b samples per second, which is 2b hertz, or anything larger. Larger is not bad, lower is bad. Equivalently, for a given sample rate fs, perfect reconstruction is guaranteed possible for a band limit of b is less than fs by 2. So if I know that an event is happening at 60 hertz, so I have to sample it at 120 hertz or at higher values. Other way around, if I sample a signal at 120 hertz, I can reconstruct all event up to 60 hertz, not more than that. So what happens if we do undersampling? So undersampling is known as an effect as aliasing, where there are indistinguishable signal components that we cannot distinguish from each other. So it causes distortion in audio signal. You may remember in the old days radio, and it creates a specific pattern called Moir pattern, whose the term comes from textile engineering. And you can see a picture. Both pictures are taken from Wikipedia, and there is a wiki articles, nice articles on Moir patterns and wagon wheel. But for the time being, it is generate a pattern in digital image. So again, you can find similar pattern in old images which are reconstructed and made digital. So in the here there are some lines on the sky, and that can create a Moir pattern like this. If it is when if it is viewed in low resolution monitors, and same thing happened for wagon wheel effect in video. That means, if you think about or travel in an ATR aircraft, when the propeller is moving, you can see shadows, or you can, it may seem like a continuous pattern when the propellers are moving very fast. So moving forward, what are the trade-offs? That why we cannot sample at a very high rate. So the trade-off is, if we use a very high bit resolution, so we can say for an image, if we are, say when you are taking an image say at 40 megapixel compared to when you are taking the same image as a 2 megapixel, that if it is have high bit count, then the image size will be higher and it will take more time to process it. So the processing will be slow. Similarly, the duplication will be slow. On the other hand, if we take low bit count, then we will have a poor duplication, but we will have fast processing. Similar thing with sample rate, that if I have high sample rate, it will be slow to process, and if we have low sample rate, it will have poor duplication, but we can process it fast. And why we are talking all this in the context of this particular course, because when say you are developing intelligent interaction technique, like as I told in a couple of lectures later, we will talk about uh, developing gesture recognition, eye gaze tracking system, etc. So for example, if I take the example of a eye gaze tracking system, so I have to only detect the eyeball, or more precisely the pupil location, and for that I do not need a very high resolution camera, because the most cases the eye have a specific color. The eyeball is white in color and the pupil is either black, blue, brown, or some shades of that. So for most commercial eye gaze tracker, they used a low frequency, but sorry, high frequency, low resolution camera. Why low resolution camera? Because I do not need a high resolution for detecting a black spot from white background. And why it is high speed? Because I have to sample it quickly, and I have to detect where the person is looking at faster than the rate of saccades. On the other hand, say we are developing, and same thing happens when we look at any optical tracker system, say for example, OptiTrack system, that where we used marker-based tracking. That again, there we need most of these cameras work in infrared range. That we use low resolution, high speed camera. On the other hand, say when you are doing image processing, say for example, object detection, say for an autonomous vehicle, then probably you need high resolution imaging, because you do not want to lose uh, texture or color features, which will be important for you to classify that whether it is a pedestrian or whether it is a bus or whether it is a cow or a different animal or a different traffic participant. So when we will design intelligent user interface, so for, and same type of sensing also become true, that when we are doing say speech processing or acoustic signal processing, etc. So the choice of sensing equipment uh, should follow this trade-off based on our requirement. So moving on, this is as I was initially telling, that a signal is described by three features: magnitude, frequency, and phase. So here it is just um, explaining it using a sinusoidal signal, because it is easiest to uh, because it is easiest to process. So if we, and here you can also see that how it is represented. So here we are seeing the signal in the time axis, and as a sinusoidal signal, it's repeating. And this is A is the amplitude, and this is the frequency or the time it takes to come to the same value. And 1 by T0 is the F0. So in the frequency domain, it is we can also represent the same signal by changing the T axis to F and plotting the amplitude like that. And at this Tth equal to 0 second, the signal has already changed from 0 to up to this value. So this change we are designating with alpha, and this is the phase. Now this 0 can be somewhere else also, but this 0 is defined that from when you are starting to record. So this is the example is further explained with a sinusoid that we instead of A0 and F0 we put some actual value, and here also we put millisecond, and you can say from 0 to how many times the signal is repeating itself. So you can, if it is millisecond, so here you can see there are 5 peak, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can do this calculation that if it is repeating 5 times in 10 millisecond, how many times it is repeating in 1000 millisecond. So it will be 500 times, 5 into 100. That's why the frequency is 500 hertz. And at 0th instant, the value is 3. So that's why the phase is marked as 0.3, and another is minus 0.3. So this minus part we will look at into us very soon, that how this minus part is coming. And this is coming mostly due to this mathematical processing. So it doesn't have physical significance, that it's not really the signal is getting negated, but it's the way we represent or mathematically present a signal. So that we will see in a couple of slides. So how we can do this? So for a sinusoid, this is very easy, that I can count. There are 5 peaks, so it will be 5 into 100, 500. But what will be for arbitrary shaped signal? So very well known, or maybe the most used way of converting time domain representation of a signal to frequency domain is through Fourier transform, and proposed by Joseph Fourier in 1878. And he assumed that any signal can be represented by summation of a set of sine waves. Why? Because sine waves response, each sine wave has a single frequency response. So if we can find the constituent sine wave of any arbitrary signal, then I can represent that signal in through frequency domain, or I can find all the frequency component of that signal. So how we can find that? Of course, there is equation. So this is the discrete Fourier transform equation, because we are more in our practical applications in computer science. Mostly we deal with discrete signals, and here you can see that I am using two independent variables u and v. Why? Because the same discrete Fourier transform we can do in both acoustic signal as well as image signal, and this is the mathematical representation. For non-discrete or continuous Fourier transform, we will change these summation signs with integration symbol, and the Fourier transform will convert a time domain signal into its frequency domain, and the inverse DFT will convert the frequency domain representation into time domain. So we will maybe a few slides later we will see that why we take this extra headache to convert a signal into frequency domain, because a lot of processing that we require in our for our purpose, those are easy to explain in frequency domain than on a time domain or in the XY or pixel value domain. We'll see in a second. But before going into other the utility of frequency domain representation, let us look at two more examples of time to frequency domain representation. One is the Laplace transform. It is used more on the continuous or acoustic signal domain than on the digital signal domain. So Laplace transform also, this is for the continuous signal, and inverse Laplace transform you can see. So again, here T is the time domain, S is the frequency domain, and here is one example of converting the unit step signal. Unit step signal means flat signal with amplitude 1 unit, converting it into frequency domain in 1 by S. And in the link below, you will find a set of examples that how we use Laplace transform in practice to convert any random signal into frequency domain using Laplace transform. And generally what we do that like the differentiation or integration table that we have used in our everyday life, that x squared differentiation is 2x, 3 x to the power x to the power n's differentiation is n into x to the power n minus 1, like that. We generally memorize that into our for our daily work on differential or integral calculus. Exactly like there is a table for Laplace transform for common signals. And what we do that if we really need to convert a random signal into or a random equation of a signal into Laplace domain, that we convert this equation for one of these known symbols, and from that we will just replace those values in the S domain, which shows the frequency domain. But for digital signal processing, a more common technique is rather the Z transform, which use the complex variable, where we complex variable, if you remember that we represent it by a plus ib, where I is the imaginary number and I equal to root over minus 1. So we represent the signal using a complex symbol, and here the rate of decay or growth is determined by r. So the signal is the signal is instead of like a graph, the signal is represented in polar coordinates, where the rate of decay or growth is determined by r, that how fast the signal is changing, and the frequency of oscillation is determined by omega, or this angle, as you can see here. And in this table, you can find a comparison between these three transform. Again, we need not to go into all mathematical detail of that unless you are specifically using one of the techniques, but still it's good to know all the possible techniques between time and frequency domain transform. And as you can see that Z transform only works for digital signal, and it is possible to convert or show the Fourier transform or Z transform a special case of Laplace transform also, because Laplace transform rather is more generic than the Z and Fourier. And also both Laplace and Z can be used for both stable and unstable system, where Fourier can only transform can only be used for stable system. So stable system means that you have a bounded output for a bounded input. And this is the summary of the three equations that we looked at in the previous slides. And as on the last row, you can see that for certain assumption here in Laplace transform, we represent the frequency with S, that we can show Fourier transform as a special case of Laplace transform. And similarly, the Z transform is same as a discrete transform when the rate of growth is r equal to 1. And that's why I mentioned that the Laplace transform rather is more generic way of converting time domain signal to frequency domain. And both Z and Fourier can be shown as special cases of Laplace. And in our digital signal processing, we mostly use the Fourier transform and also the Z transform. So coming out from all these mathematical details, that why we need to take all this headache that doing all this mathematical equation, that for most signal and image processing system, the very basic step, whether it is speech processing, optical character recognition, sketch recognition, or gesture recognition, the flow is like that, that there is a pre-processing. Then we convert the signal into a frequency domain representation. We do something called filtering, which is easier to explain in frequency domain. You can see in a second. And then we do the inverse Fourier transform and get back to the original signal. So when we also write algorithm or computer program, we follow a very similar step. So this is one example. So in the left hand side you can see a original image. And why I am using image, because if I use acoustic signal, it has to be hard, make audible to you to explain all these changes. But while if I use image, it is easier for you to visualize that. That's why I am using image processing to explain this filtering technique. But please note that the same technique is equally applicable for both uh, acoustic signals or speech signals, and similarly for video processing. So here the low pass filter, what it does, that it let cut out the low frequency components, and similarly the high pass filter or low pass filter, it rather so it only let pass the low frequency component, and it cut out the high frequency component. And the high pass filter is, as the name suggests, that it cut out the low frequency component and let pass the high frequency component. So what does it mean? So that's what we can see it, visualize it with an image. So a high frequency component in an image means that there is a big difference in contrast. So say if you see my pointer here, so here is a white strip and there is gray. So at this edge we have a big change in pixel value. So big change means there will be a big frequency component. So in the high pass filter, you can see it more distinctly. Okay, from even from this image, all these big change in the contrast or big change in pixel values. While in the low pass filter, you can see this is more blurred. That means that it passed only low frequency component. It cut out the high frequency component. So we will see another example of this low and high pass filtering in a second. But why we use it? Why we use filtering? That one is for outlier or sudden change detection, and it relates to the masking. That whether there is a big change happened in the amplitude. Smoothing is very similar to this low pass filter, where it cut out all the high frequency component and smoothen or soften the signal. Noise cancellation, which is again similar to low pass filter, high pass filter, that based on the frequency of the noise signal, we cut out noise. And the special purpose filter is edge detection. So there are many special purpose filters for each activity. So one such we will look at edge detection in a second. So this is one example of a case study from a user interface or user interaction development point of view. So this is, you can check out this paper. I published with Nick Blow. He happens to be one of my undergraduate students back in Cambridge. So what we did is that we recorded the mouse cursor movement by people with hyperkinetic motor impairment. What does it mean? That people who has tremor in finger, when they try to move the try to use a computer mouse, they have find it difficult to stop the pointer movement. And here in the blue line, you can see a typical movement recorded from such a person, that you can see too many peaks there. That means the cursor is moving like this. So there is so much noise. And what Nick worked on, that he fitted a polynomial line and he cut out this high frequency component using this polynomial. So it is like a low pass filter, and he smoothened the cursor movement. So even the person is jittering or he is moving the cursor too much up and down, but we can still smoothen his cursor trajectory by fitting these points through a polynomial. So next we will look at image filtering, that how we actually implement. And here we will look at this very important operation called convolution. So which is matrix multiplication. So how it works, say for example, this is a very simple example of convolution, that what I am doing, that I am defining a region. So here is a 3 into 3. All these dots are pixels, right? And this gray is the pixel value. And this is how we represent an image, that we calculate the pixel value for each position on the image. And the pixel value depends on the resolution. So I take the pixel values of these 9 pixels, I add it and average it and replace this value here with the middle pixel. And then, as if just like a wet sponge, I am just moving it across the X and Y axis of the filter. So we implement it using a matrix multiplication. But for averaging, as you can see that we can just add this value and average it, I mean add and divide by 9. So here you can see that we take a 3 into 3 arithmetic mean of an image, ignoring floating point or whatever, and we just do simple arithmetic averaging, and it turns out to be a very good low pass filter. So the same thing you can think about in a time domain signal. Say you are receiving a time domain signal at 1000 hertz. So what you are doing, that you are taking 10 samples and replacing the value with the average of these 10 samples. So this is same as here, that I am taking the neighborhood of this. I am taking neighborhood of this xy value and replacing the xy value by the average of its neighbors. So this replacement of the neighborhood, this is known as convolution, and we will come to that. So here see uh, what it involves: overlap, multiply, add with convolution mask. Okay, so how we can implement that? That I can put this value 1 by 9, 1 by 9 like this, and I can multiply this matrix with this 9 matrix, and the summation we can replace here. So this is by which we can implement that instead of actually manually calculating all the average. So this matrix multiplication, this is known as convolution. So if I now slightly go back in our previous lecture. So during the classification and clustering lecture, you remember that we used a neural network, and I was talking about linear and non-linear separability, that with a single neuron we can separate and or function, but we need a neural network to separate a XOR function because it's not linearly separable. So on those cases, we are using the neural network as a classifier. Second, I was showing you a software, and we had a few dots on the screen, and I was fitting a curve using a neural network. And I was showing you, and I also shared the code with you, that we told that this is a backpropagation example by which I can fit a curve, whatever may be the shape of the curve. It need not to be linear, using a linear neural network. So that was another example of neural network for regression. And same thing we can also do with other machine learning model. So here now I am talking about an operation called matrix multiplication. So this is the another operation that we can also do with neural network, and the resulting neural network is known as convolutional neural network, which will be the subject of the next week's lecture. But it is important that you understand that what is the basic convolution operation is. Then it will be easier for you to follow the CNN lecture also. So moving on, here I am using same value for all these matrix element 1 by 9, 1 by 9, 1 by 9, because I just averaging it. But I need not to put same value, rather I can put different values, and that will have a very interesting effect. So we can represent, as I was just telling, using a matrix multiplication. And this is a 2D convolution using a filter HXY. So this H is known as the convolution mask, and we can implement it using matrix multiplication. Of course, we need not to do anything ourselves. We can write a MATLAB program which can do it, or any other language you can write a program. And we need not to use the averaging filter, rather we can use a more complicated Gaussian function. And if you remember Gaussian distribution, it is described by two parameters, mu and sigma. Mu is the mean, sigma is the standard deviation. So here we can use different values of mu and sigma and construct a convolution mask based on a Gaussian distribution. And this is one example. Again, you can see that the example of this low and high pass filtering. So this is on the left side, there is the original image, and this is the noisy image. This type of noise is known as salt and pepper noise, as if you are sprinkling salt and pepper on the image. And when I am convoluting with a sharp Gaussian filter, so sigma equal to 1.5 in the in the previous case, that this sigma is thin. So then, as you can see, that the picture becomes a bit blurred. But still there are some salt and pepper noise, but the individual feature of the images are still visible. But if I increase the value of sigma, then what happens, the picture becomes further blurred than the previous one, but all these salt and pepper present in the noisy picture, those are gone. So I can get a nicer picture of the sky at a cost that by blurring the the features on the ship. And this example also nicely show that the trade-offs between image processing, that why we need to study all this convolutional neural network or etc. That it is in reality, it is very, very difficult to design a filter with absolute parameter that it will work in all cases. So when I am trying to reconstruct the sky, I have to use a bigger value of sigma. But when I am trying to get the features of the ship, I have to use a smaller sigma. And then we have to kind of handcraft it for each component, for the lighthouse, for each of these lines coming out, or the mast. But that is very time consuming, or we have to do it manually. And that's why we use more sophisticated technique by which we can parameterize based on the features of the image. So now we look at probably the last topic of today's lecture is edge detection. So this is a very specific type of convolution mask. And remember, in high pass filter, we were just looking that if I can only pass the high frequency component, then wherever there is a big change in contrast, that becomes more visible than the original image. And we just exploit that principle further to only keep the edges of the images and remove all details. And for many applications, that is all needed. For object detection, say for example, if I can get the contour of the image, then I can take certain decision about the class of the image. But different example is patch detection, in which case we are not only happy with the contour or shape, but we have to look at the color feature and distribution of color, or the patch, from which we can take decisions. Say for example, facial feature point tracking. So there we also look for not only contour, also the color. And then there are other examples also where the color feature is also important, or the texture of the image is also important in addition to the contour. So this is a very simple mask. Like remember, in the previous case we were using 1/9, 1/9. Here we are using negative and positive value, and during convolution we will divide it by 1/8. So when, and there is one mask for horizontal axis, one mask for y-axis, and it is very well known as Sobel operator, one of the early example of edge detection. A modern one is called Canny edge detection, which is also based on convolution, maybe a slightly different mask. And this is again example of that how you will decide the size of the convolution mask. So the principle is very similar, that we were just a second ago we were talking about the spread or sigma of the Gaussian distribution. It is a similar discussion, that if I use a bigger convolution mask, then I will have good detection of bigger features in my image, but it will have poor localization. That means if there is a small feature or small object in the scene, that I can miss. On the other hand, if I use a smaller mask, it will have good localization, that it will detect even the smallest available feature in the image. But that is also the problem with it, that it may also detect many noises and detect them as features of the image. So again, there is a trade-off, that which will be the base size of the convolution mask. And again, there is no clear-cut answer. And that's why we go for CNN or convolutional neural network, where we automate the whole process. And as Abhishek will explain you in the next lecture, you will see that if we really visualize the intermediate layers of the CNN, you will see that we are just following this big arrow. That means we are starting with a smaller convolution mask, where we are detecting many different features in the image. And as we are going towards detecting a aircraft or a car or a human, we are increasing the size of the convolution mask, and only kind of blurring the image and just keeping the relevant feature on the image, from which we can detect the class of the object. So in the next lecture, you will see a practical application of this blue arrow, down arrow in the screen. So let us finish with a simple example of using image processing in one of our projects. So sorry. So what we did is we had a project that in which we are developing a visual inspection module using classical computer vision, and the problem is that we talked with a local medium scale industry that were working on PCB assembly and also some repair work. And many times what happened that they do not have the exact definition or the machine readable form of a PCB like a Gerber file, but they just have the physical PCB and they have to put the chips and transistors at correct place. So we developed a embodiment as part of one of the Master of Design project where it helps people, these persons to pick up the correct IC and place it. And here you can see the intermediate stages of processing, that the image is processed from changing colors, place, and doing morphological processing, which is very similar to this high pass filtering or edge detection, where we removed all these individual features and only keep the bigger features from which we can detect the IC. And then finally, we used canny edge detection on this pre-process stage, and which detects the IC. And this is one video which you may enjoy. So presently some students are working on attaching a robotic arm with it. So in this camera, it is detecting, used for detecting the IC and detecting its correct orientation based on a notch on the IC. And if it is correctly detected, presently it's not completely horizontal, so wrong orientation. So now it has correct orientation. And then with a twitcher, he will peek it, and there is a projector which showing the correct location on the PCB where it has to be placed. You have to pick it and place it there. So this IC detection and correct orientation feature that use classical computer vision, but in the modern visual inspection system, people use convolutional neural network because that is easier to implement also. And then we undertook some user study to optimize the ambient light. So here it's detected what the IC to be put. So now, actually the operation is a bit faster, but for demonstration, we recorded it at a slow pace, and then the chip has to be placed at this correct position. So here are the takeaway points from today's lecture, that we discussed how we can represent data as signal, doing elementary signal manipulation and time and frequency domain conversions, and we talk about filtering, smoothing, and masking operations, and of course the convolution operation. And in the next lecture, we will talk about convolutional neural network. And remember, convolution is this matrix multiplication process where we take a pixel value, look at its neighborhood, and replace the pixel value based on the values of its neighborhood. And it can have multiple effects, like for example, if we use an average, then it will filter, or low pass filter. Then we can, based on the convolution mask, we can also do high pass filter. One particular type of high pass filter is edge detection. And in the next lecture, we will look at further detail that how exactly this convolution works in a convolution neural net. And if you want to use a CNN into your any application, then you can use it also like a black box feature, that there are plenty of CNN models available in it, and you can just feed image and get it. But if you want to get good result, then you have to do some input data processing also. So for that, it's better that if you have the basic idea of signal processing.